The autumn rain had soaked through Colonel James "Jim" Brennan's jacket by the time he reached Riverside Bistro. The upscale restaurant sat on the corner of Main Street, warm light spilling from its windows onto the wet sidewalk. Jim had been walking for hours, partly because his car was in the shop, partly because walking helped quiet the memories that sometimes got too loud. At 58, Jim carried himself with military posture despite the worn jacket and faded jeans. His gray hair was cut short, military style. His boots were old but polished. To anyone who knew what to look for, the signs of a veteran were clear, but most people didn't know what to look for. Jim pushed through the restaurant's front door, grateful for the warmth. The hostess stand was empty, but the dining room beyond was moderately busy. Couples at candlelit tables, business dinners in progress, the quiet hum of upscale dining. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut through the ambiance. "We don't allow solicitors." Jim turned to see a man in his late 30s approaching quickly. Dark suit, slicked back hair, the confident stride of someone accustomed to authority. His name tag read, Manager Derek Sullivan. "I'm not soliciting," Jim said calmly. "I'm here for dinner." Derek's eyes traveled over Jim's appearance, the rain-soaked jacket, the worn jeans, the weathered boots. His expression hardened. "Sir, this is a fine dining establishment. We have a dress code." Jim glanced around the dining room. He saw men in jeans, women in casual dresses, nothing exceptionally formal. "I see other people in jeans." "Those are paying customers," Derek said, his voice dropping lower but gaining edge. "Look, I don't want to be rude, but we've had problems with homeless individuals coming in here asking for money or food. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I'm not homeless. I'm a customer who'd like a table. Do you have a reservation?" "No, but—" "We're fully booked," Derek interrupted, despite the fact that Jim could see several empty tables. Jim took a slow breath, recognizing the situation for what it was. He'd faced this before, the assumption that a weathered older man in worn clothes couldn't possibly belong in nice establishments, that he must be homeless, must be there to beg. "I have money," Jim said quietly. "I can pay for my meal." Derek's expression suggested he didn't believe that for a second. "Sir, I'm trying to be polite. Please don't make this difficult." "I'm a veteran," Jim tried. "I just finished a long walk and wanted—" "Everyone's got a story," Derek cut him off. "I've heard them all. Please leave before I have to call the police." Jim felt the familiar weight settle on his chest. Not anger exactly, but a deep exhaustion. He'd served 30 years in the Army, had commanded troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, had earned a Silver Star, a Bronze Star with Valor, and a Purple Heart, had led men and women through hell and brought most of them home. But to this manager, he was just another homeless veteran to be shuffled out the door. "All right," Jim said. "I'll leave." As he turned toward the door, a voice from the dining room called out, "Jim?" "Jim Brennan?" Jim turned to see a man in his early 40s standing from a table, face lit with recognition and something that looked like shock. The man wore an expensive suit, had the groomed appearance of success, but his expression held genuine emotion. "Sir," the man said, the military honorific automatic even after years. He approached quickly, hand extended. "Colonel Brennan, I can't believe it's you." Jim studied the man's face, recognition clicking into place. "Martinez? Daniel Martinez?" "Yes, sir." Daniel's grin was huge. He turned to Derek. "This man is Colonel James Brennan. He was my commanding officer in Iraq. He saved my life and the lives of my entire unit." Derek's expression shifted from dismissive to uncertain. This gentleman was just what?" Daniel's smile disappeared. "Just being thrown out of your restaurant? He didn't have a reservation, and the dress code—" "The dress code?" Daniel's voice rose. "I'm wearing jeans under this suit jacket. Half your customers are dressed casually. What's the real reason you were kicking him out?" Derek's face flushed. "Look, we've had issues with homeless individuals. So you assumed Colonel Brennan was homeless because of how he's dressed? Because he's been walking in the rain?" Daniel's voice carried across the restaurant now. Other diners had stopped eating, watching the confrontation. "Sir, please lower your voice." "No, I don't think I will." Daniel turned to Jim. "Colonel, please. Join my table, I insist." "Daniel, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. You saved my life in Fallujah. The least I can do is buy you dinner." He looked back at Derek, his expression hardening. "Unless your manager has a problem with that." Derek was trapped. The situation had escalated beyond his control. "Of course not. Please, let me show you both to a better table." "We're fine where we are," Daniel said coldly. "Just bring another place setting. And maybe some towels so the colonel can dry off." As Derek hurried away, Daniel guided Jim to his table. "I'm so sorry, sir." That was completely unacceptable. "It's not your fault," Jim said, settling into a chair. "No, but I'm the owner of this restaurant." "So, in a way it is." Jim's eyebrows rose. "You own this place?" "For 2 years now. Built it from the ground up after I got out of the service. Used my VA benefits, started small, grew it into this." Daniel gestured around the dining room. "And I had no idea my manager was treating people like that." A server appeared with towels and a menu for Jim. Derek hovered nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Colonel Brennan," Daniel said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "would you tell me about what you've been up to since you retired?" Jim understood what Daniel was doing, giving him a platform, restoring dignity in front of the people who'd witnessed his near ejection. "I retired 3 years ago," Jim said. 30 years in the Army. These days, I volunteer at the VA hospital, help younger veterans navigate the benefits system, also working with a nonprofit that builds housing for homeless veterans. That's incredible work, sir. It's necessary work. Too many vets end up on the streets after serving their country. System fails them in ways that—" Jim paused, glancing at Derek, "that most people don't understand." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "How many vets do you work with?" "Directly, maybe 40 or 50, but our organization helps hundreds across the state." "And you're doing this as a volunteer?" "Someone has to. These men and women gave everything for their country. The country owes them more than VA benefits and thank you for your service platitudes." A woman at a nearby table spoke up. "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. What organization do you work with?" Jim told her the name. She pulled out her phone immediately. "I'd like to make a donation." "Would $500 help?" "Every dollar helps," Jim said, genuinely moved. Another diner joined in. "Make that $1,000 from my family. Thank you for your service, Colonel." Soon, half the restaurant was pulling out phones, making donations, asking questions about the organization. Derek stood to the side, watching his dining room transform into an impromptu fundraiser, his face a mixture of embarrassment and growing understanding. Daniel watched with pride. Then he turned to Derek. "My office. Now." In the back office, Daniel closed the door. "Tell me exactly what happened." Derek started with excuses. The dress code, past problems with solicitors, trying to maintain standards. "Stop," Daniel interrupted. "You judged a decorated military veteran based on his appearance. You assumed he was homeless and tried to throw him out. I didn't know." "That's the point. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You just assumed." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "We have had homeless people come in." "So? Are homeless people not allowed to eat in restaurants? Are veterans who've fallen on hard times not worthy of basic respect?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean? Explain to me how you justified treating a customer that way." Derek couldn't answer. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I was 22 years old in Fallujah when our convoy got hit. ED took out the lead vehicle. Small arms fire from both sides. We were pinned down, taking casualties. I was shot in the leg, bleeding out, certain I was going to die." He paused, letting the memory wash over him. "Colonel Brennan led a rescue unit straight into that ambush. Under fire, he pulled me and 3 other guys to safety, carried me himself because I couldn't walk, held pressure on my leg wound while calling in air support. Stayed with us until medevac arrived." Derek listened, his face pale. "That man," Daniel continued, "has more courage, more integrity, more value than most people will ever have. And you tried to throw him out because his jacket was wet and his jeans were worn. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to him. And then, if he's generous enough to accept it, maybe you'll keep your job. But if I ever hear about you treating anyone like that again, veteran or not, homeless or not, you're done here. Understood?" Derek nodded miserably. Understood. Back in the dining room, Jim was deep in conversation with several tables who'd gathered around to hear his stories. The man who'd been ejected 15 minutes ago was now the center of attention, sharing experiences, answering questions, embodying exactly the kind of character and service that the restaurant should have honored from the start. Derek approached quietly. "Colonel Brennan? Could I speak with you for a moment?" Jim excused himself and stood, following Derek a few steps away from the tables. "Sir, I owe you an apology, a sincere one." Derek's voice shook slightly. "I made assumptions about you based purely on appearance. I treated you disrespectfully. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry." Jim studied the younger man. "Do you understand why what you did was wrong? I judged you without knowing anything about you." "No, that's not it." Jim's voice was gentle but firm. "You judged me based on what you thought I was, homeless, poor, unworthy of your establishment. But the problem isn't that you misjudged me specifically. The problem is that you think homeless people or poor people deserve to be treated that way at all." Derek blinked, processing. "I'm not homeless," Jim continued. "But even if I were, I'd still deserve basic human dignity. The veteran you kick out today because he looks rough might be the one who needs that warm meal most. The person you dismiss as unworthy might be fighting battles you can't see." "You're right," Derek said quietly. I've been so focused on maintaining image, on attracting the right clientele, that I forgot what service actually means." "Service means everyone," Jim said. "Rich, poor, veteran, civilian, housed, homeless. You serve people, not just the ones who look like they belong." Derek nodded, the lesson sinking in. "How can I make this right?" "Start by changing how you treat people. All people. And maybe by understanding that a worn jacket doesn't tell you anything about the person wearing it." An hour later, Jim sat with Daniel over dessert, the restaurant's energy warm and welcoming now. "I can't believe you're here," Daniel said, shaking his head. "After all these years. I had no idea this was your place. I just wanted to get out of the rain and have a decent meal. Instead, you got profiled and almost thrown out. I'm so sorry, sir." "Daniel, you saved it. You stood up. That matters more than the initial mistake. Derek's a good guy, usually, but he's been so worried about the restaurant's image that he lost sight of what matters." "Will you fire him?" Daniel considered. "No, not this time. He genuinely seems to understand what he did wrong, but I'll be watching. And we'll be implementing some changes, staff training, new policies, a different approach to who we serve and how." "Good," Jim said, "because the restaurant that throws out veterans is different from the restaurant that learns from its mistakes and becomes better." As they finished dinner, Daniel insisted on covering the bill. He also wrote a personal check for $5,000 to Jim's Veterans Housing Organization. "It's not enough," Daniel said, "but it's a start." "It's more than enough," Jim assured him. Walking out into the night, the rain had stopped. Jim felt lighter than he had in weeks, not because of the meal or the money or even the recognition, but because he'd witnessed something rare: genuine accountability, real learning, meaningful change. Derek appeared at the door as Jim was leaving. "Colonel Brennan? Thank you for the lesson. I won't forget it." Jim nodded. "Make sure you don't. And the next time someone walks in who doesn't fit your expectations, give them a chance. You might be surprised by who they are." 3 months later, Riverside Bistro made local news. Not for discrimination, but for a new program Daniel had implemented. Every Wednesday night, the restaurant opened its doors to veterans free of charge. Any veteran, regardless of appearance or circumstances, could get a hot meal, no questions asked. Derek helped run the program. He'd taken Jim's words to heart, undergoing training with veterans organizations, learning about PTSD, homelessness, and the challenges soldiers faced transitioning to civilian life. The program attracted attention. Other restaurants followed suit. The conversation about how businesses treated veterans, especially homeless veterans, shifted in the community. Jim attended the first Wednesday dinner, watching the restaurant fill with vets of all ages and backgrounds. Some were successful professionals. Others were clearly struggling. All were welcomed equally. Daniel approached with a beer. "What do you think, sir?" I think you turned a mistake into something meaningful. That takes courage. I learned from the best, Daniel said, raising his glass. You taught me in Fallujah that everyone matters. Everyone deserves a chance. I just forgot for a while. They clinked glasses, two soldiers finding common ground across the years. A young veteran approached, looking nervous. He wore threadbare clothes and had the hollow-eyed look of someone fighting invisible demons. Excuse me, is this really free? For veterans? Absolutely, Daniel said warmly. Find a seat. Order whatever you want. The young man's eyes welled up. Thank you. I haven't had a real meal in a while. What's your name? Jim asked. Marcus, Marine Corps. Just got back from Afghanistan. Welcome home, Marcus. Come sit with us. As the evening progressed, Jim watched the restaurant fill with stories of service, sacrifice, struggle, and survival. Every person there carried invisible wounds. Every one deserved respect, dignity, and a hot meal. Derek worked the room with genuine care, learning names, hearing stories, serving with humility that came from understanding his own capacity for prejudice and choosing to do better. This was what service looked like. Not perfection, but growth. Not never making mistakes, but learning from them. A year after the initial incident, Jim received an invitation to speak at a hospitality industry conference. Daniel had nominated him to talk about treating all customers with dignity. Standing before hundreds of restaurant owners and managers, Jim told the story of walking into Riverside Bistro soaked from rain, being judged as homeless, nearly ejected, and then recognized by a former soldier whose life he'd saved. But here's the thing, Jim said, approaching the conclusion. I'm not special because I'm a decorated colonel. I'm not more deserving of respect because I saved lives in combat. The homeless veteran you kick out of your restaurant? He might not have medals, might not have a soldier who remembers him, might have lost everything to PTSD or addiction or just the cruel mathematics of a system that fails too many. He paused, letting his words land. He still deserves your respect, still deserves basic human dignity, because we don't serve people based on what they've accomplished. We serve them because they're human beings who need food, warmth, and a moment of grace. The applause was sustained and genuine. After the speech, a young restaurant owner approached. Colonel Brennan, I've been guilty of exactly what that manager did to you. Judging people, protecting my restaurant's image, forgetting that service means everyone. How do I change? Jim smiled. You just did. Recognizing the problem is the first step. The second step is choosing differently. Every single time. Later that evening, Jim returned to Riverside Bistro for dinner. Derek greeted him at the door with genuine warmth. Colonel Brennan, your usual table? Actually, I'll sit at the bar tonight. Easier for conversation. Of course. Derek led him through the dining room, where several veterans from the Wednesday program were dining with families. The restaurant had become a gathering place for the veteran community. As Jim settled onto a bar stool, he reflected on how one rainy evening had transformed into something larger, how being profiled and nearly ejected had led to a program feeding hundreds of veterans, how one manager's prejudice had become a catalyst for genuine change. The bartender approached, a young veteran named Sarah, whom the restaurant had hired through their new Veterans Employment Program. What can I get you, Colonel? Just a beer tonight, and maybe some conversation, Sarah smiled. Both are on the house, and I've got plenty of stories if you've got the time. Jim had the time. He always had time for veterans, for their stories, for the invisible wounds they carried, and the visible strength they showed just by surviving. That's what service meant, not just taking orders and bringing food, but seeing people, all people, as worthy of time, attention, dignity, and respect. Derek had learned that lesson, Daniel had reinforced it, and together they'd created something that transcended one rainy evening's mistake. They'd created a place where everyone belonged. If this story resonated with you, remember, veterans are not photo opportunities or thank you for your service platitudes. They're human beings who served their country and deserve our respect, especially when they're struggling. Share this with restaurant owners, business managers, anyone in service industries. Remind them that dignity costs nothing, and discrimination costs everything. Subscribe to Real Justice Stories for more tales of prejudice confronted, lessons learned, and the transformative power of choosing to do better. Thank you for watching. Remember, the veteran you dismiss today might have saved lives in combat. The homeless person you judge might have sacrificed more than you'll ever know. Treat everyone with the respect they deserve, not because of what they've done, but because they're human.